you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. As you know that we record these calls and place our recordings on our YouTube channel. If you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me fine and see the presentation. Okay. Thank you very much. And our topic of discussion today is updates around API Management Workspace. So API Management Workspaces have just gone GA. And I know we covered this topic a few months back when it was in public preview. And there are some significant changes that has happened since it has gone GA. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to go over some of those changes. And they also provide more details about their roadmap, like what they're going to be doing in the future. And we'll look at that as well. And of course, there would be a demo. So with that, so API management workspaces. So first of all, API management workspaces have now are in GA. Just keep in mind they're only now available with premium SKU. So if you are using them with any other SKU, you should have gotten an email notification that they will only be available with premium SKU. What they are, they provide another hierarchy. So they are just like folders. They provide another hierarchy under APIM. So you have API management, and then you will have workspaces if you are using them. And then under that, you will have APIs, products, and subscription and all that. And there is a new resource that is being come into picture, which is the API Management Workspaces Gateway or Workspace Gateway. And what that does is that provides runtime isolation. So now in this GA mode, every workspace will have its own gateway. So there will be a complete runtime isolation. Okay. So what's going to happen is that a you will have a workspace, and then you will be creating a gateway with it. Without that, a workspace will not function. Okay, and I know not all application teams will need that, and we will talk about it later on in a second. So just get an idea. You can scale out that gateway. You can have different networking setup for that gateway, and that's the thing. So it's independent of API management. Got it? And you can do all that stuff. And here's a quick summary of some of the things. And the big thing here is the runtime isolation. This is the key here. With the API management gateway, now you have another level where you can apply your runtime setting. So think of it. You have multiple teams, and those teams have their own requirement. Maybe a team is publishing APIs which are very kind of have large number of consumers, and you may need to scale out. Another team may have APIs which are not consumed that often, so you may not require that scale. So you can have this with this API management workspace gateway, you can put them in separate workspaces, and each workspace will have their own gateway, and it can scale in and scale out. And you can scale the gateway in and out based on the runtime requirement of whatever APIs that you are running in that API management workspace. And just to kind of do a recap of the concept, with API management, when it started, that the only model possible was centralized. In that, or one of the model possible was centralized. In that, basically, you have all your APIs that are living inside your API management instances, and you may have different teams, but they're all managing the same instance. And what the challenge becomes is that people may be stepping on each other toes. There's no way to segregate that. You may have some sensitive APIs that you don't want other teams to, kind of, you know, take a look at that. And everything is in the same API management model. So that becomes too cumbersome sometime, as APIs are growing. The second one was silo model, and that you create one API management instance for every team. Okay, maybe an API team have 10 APIs, and you give them one API management instance, and that's how you do it. So you have now a number of instances. It works in a way like every team now has independence. They can, use their instance and go with it. They can scale in and scale out. All of that runtime issues are minimized, but at the same time, now how you apply governance. And when they are publishing, each API management instance will have its own API developer portal, and that becomes an issue. So that's where the siloed model, the federated model comes in, and where I'm going with API management workspaces, this is the model that is now possible. As I said, workspaces are nothing but kind of, you can think of it as folders inside API management, another level of hierarchy, which is completely siloed in a sense that if you are working in your workspace and there's another team working in another workspace, they cannot look at their API. It's like they're working on a separate API management instance at all. And with uh, the availability of the runtime isolation, which is having a separate gateway for API management, now you have further kind of support to have separate runtime requirement or scaling and all that, and clear segregation that kind of makes it easier for you to have to support diverse team. So let's say that you have multiple teams, and each team gets their own workspace. It's able to set their own runtime requirements, and you, at the same time, you can apply global policies. So let's say you want to have a policy that, okay, every team has to look for these headers in the incoming request, something like that. You can still apply at the API management level. So you still have central governance, but at the same time, you give the teams freedom to work in their own silos or in their own space called API management workspaces. Okay, and one more thing I want to mention here is that since you are in a single API management instance, when you are publishing your APIs, they are gonna be published to the same API management developer portal. Got it? So basically, you still have, you don't have multiple portal that the challenge we have with multiple API management instances. Okay. So just keep in mind API management workspace gateway. So each time you create an API management workspace, a gateway is created. That gateway is not free. There is a cost to it, and we will take a look at it once we get into the demo piece. Okay, any questions so far, folks? Okay, so let's move on. Let's go into the. Okay, in regards to the APIM workspace gateway, there are three ways you can set it up, and we will look in the demo as well. You can have a public gateway. And by the way, this is independent of your API management instance. Okay, so you may have a private instance, but your gateway, that is where your if you are using Workspace, where your Workspace API will be running, can be public. What that means, incoming traffic can come over public IP, and the traffic to the backends can go over public IP. Got it? Or you can have public private, where your front end is public IP, your back end, you go through a virtual network. So that's where you may have services that are hosted inside your virtual network or on-prem, and where your VNet is connected to on-prem through Express route or site-to-site VPN, and that's how you're accessing it. And the third one is private. So basically, your inbound is coming over a private endpoint, private IP through a virtual network, and your outbound is also going over a virtual network. So that's the three ways you can have it. Okay. Um, and let's go to our demo scenario here. So this is the demo scenario. In the demo, what we are going to be showing, we are going to be showing a private architecture, and in that we have um, API which is running an Azure App Service. I have dropped the private endpoint into a virtual network inside a subnet. I have created an APIM workspace and a gateway, which is internal. So basically private, and that I have dropped in a gateway subnet. And then I have a virtual machine that is running in a third subnet, which is accessing this API through this API management gate. Okay, so let's take a look before any questions in the meantime. Okay, so let's go in here. Let's go into our portal, and here is my resource group where I have all the things that I have deployed. First of all, let's look at the API management service. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. This is my API management service. As you can see, it's a premium service. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a workspace. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here, workspaces, and there is one workspace there. The two workspaces are already. I'm going to create a third one. Just keep in mind, we're going to call it APLWS, and this is APLWS, and leave the description out. Okay, now the gateway part. You have to have a gateway. So this is the three things I've discussed: public access inbound and outbound. Okay, if you do public access inbound and private outbound, it will ask you to pick a VNet. Okay, and then you go in and you set it up. If you say private access inbound, same thing. You have to pick a subnet where this will live. Okay, one very important thing, or few important things. Number one, it will take the entire subnet. So basically, that subnet will be delegated. You cannot deploy anything in that subnet. Okay, there's certain size requirement, and there's a doc in the end. You can take a look at it. Um, So that's very important to know. Okay. And at this moment, when you're deploying the gateway, it takes some time. It takes a few hours to actually deploy the gateway. So just be patient. Okay. So that's that. Okay. So once we do that, we and then we can do let's say if we do public and do next, I mean we can run it, but just for the sake of the demo, we are not going to run it. We already have one there just to save time. So this is my gateway. Let's go in. Let's take a look at it, the workspace first and then the gateway. So this is my workspace. I have one API there. And these are the different settings. What is the setting of the workspace name? And you can change the name. You have APIs. I have one API that is running, and we are going to test it out. And uh, then let's go to the deploy. Yeah, this is the one, gateways. Okay. So I can add multiple gateways to a workspace. Okay. But this is my gateway. If I click on it, as you can see here, this gateway in the settings, scale, I can scale out. So right now there is no auto scaling. I have to manually scale out. Okay. And in the network, this is what it tells you, your private network access inbound and outbound. This is my virtual network where it is deployed. This is the subnet where it is deployed. Okay. So let me just move this thing on the side. Okay. And let's go into that sub VNet. This is my subnet where I have deployed it. And as you can see here, this subnet is delegated to hosting environment. So this is You cannot deploy anything there. Okay. I also have an NSG on that subnet. I'm gonna show you this NSG. Let's take a look at this NSG, what this NSG is doing. Okay, as you can see, inbound only allowed from virtual network and load balancer. So it's kind of pretty locked down. Got it? There is no in traffic come in from anywhere else except VNet. Okay, outbound. Outbound is all denied except virtual network. So basically, it's a very locked down virtual network. Got it? The only access is from virtual network only. That's that. Okay. And let's quickly go back and let's test it out. So basically, I have a VM that has I'm running here. This is my endpoint, and here is the one very important thing I forgot to mention. Um, let's go into our resource group, and there is has to be a private DNS zone. Okay, so let me open it. Give me 1 second, it's coming up. In the meantime, please feel free to ask if there's any questions while it's taking its sweet time to come up. Okay, so remember, our same thing applies just like we do with private endpoint. We have to have a private DNS zone. So what you do is you create a private DNS zone, and the name of the zone is the name of your gateway. So this is gateway dot whatever the name is. You use that, and then in the DNS management, you take the record set and you take the rest of the name. You see this one. So if we go back to, um, let's go back to the gateway. This is my gateway. And if we look in the overview, give it a second. Yeah. So this is the API management service. This is settings. Um, and no, this is workspace. I'm sorry. Never mind. Let me go to the gateway. Hold on 1 second. Okay. This is my gateway. So this is the runtime host name. What I have done is I have created this record set here. Okay. So this is the um, this is the DNS zone and this is the record set. Okay. And for some reason, I mean, you just pick the first IP address that is available as a part of this subnet. So that's the IP address, and that you map it to the DNS name, and that's how you access it. So if we go back to our virtual machine, so this is my virtual machine. It is running in the same subnet, so same VNet where I have my um, gateway deployed. So basically, it's going to go hit the private gateway and then get the service. So if I call it, as you can see here, I can access it. But if I copy this endpoint and try to access it from here, you see, it can't find it because it's a private endpoint. Got it? So this is important to understand. Okay. So now let's come back to the pricing of this thing. Just keep in mind, this is not, the gateway is not free. As you can see, the Workspace Gateway Premium, that is $1,400 a month. So let's say that if you have two app teams, they're each using their separate gateway, you are gonna spend $1,400 multiplied by two, $2,800 a month. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So there is a cost associated with it. And but at the same time, there are a few things that you have to keep in mind. Let's go back to our slide deck and in terms of availability, let's go back to the slide deck. Give me 1 second. Let's move. First of all, its availability. It's available in West US, North Central US, and these are the regions. More regions are coming up based on the roadmap. And these are some of the constraints. So these are some of the things that you have to be aware of. Some of the things are not supported. They have mentioned that they are bringing out support for some of the things in the future. Okay. So this is a very important thing. These are the upcoming improvements. So once they have gone GA, now there are some of the things that they're already working on, and this is public information, by the way. It's not something that is under NDA. The blogs that I have links of those blogs in the end, which is the announcement blog. It clearly talks about it. So there's nothing confidential about it. So one is the shared gateway, okay? And this is to me, I think that that's a great thing. If you remember, when we looked at the workspaces, they were using a shared gateway. And with this GA, that thing is not there. I mean, you have your, your isolated gateways, but let's say if you have some small teams, they all want to have workspaces, but they want to use a shared gateway. I mean, they don't have much load. What about that? You don't want to have give them everybody their isolated gateway. So that's a step in the right direction, I think, giving them a shared gateway where they can, which they can use across the workspaces. So that support is coming. You know, Second part is managed identity support. Right now, managed identity support is not there. That's on its way, and of course, as I said, it will be available in more regions. That's I think that goes without saying. A number of customers want to deploy in a region where they already have their application. Okay. So with GA, more regions are available. And once this thing goes, I mean, as we move further, I'm pretty sure with this, further, they will add support in more region as well. So this will give customers flexibility. So if you have deployed in a certain region, your services that you want to expose through API management, you want API management in that region as well. And one of the big thing I want to mention, faster provisioning. Like when I was doing it for my demo, it took a few hours to deploy the gateway. Okay. And what they're, if you like look at the comments, I mean, they're promising minutes. That is great. So now you have like, as you are deploying these solutions, I mean, cloud, everything tends to move with the speed of light. So that will definitely help, in kind of uh, in um, increasing the adoption of workspaces. So that's that. And finally, of course, enhanced monitoring. So basically, you can get alerts and with get monitoring with integrated app insights and things like that. So that's there as well. And please take a look at the blog. It provides some other information as well in regards to how you can take advantage of API management workspaces. So once again, just doing a quick recap. And for that, I will go back to the slide which talks about the federated model. API management workspaces allow you to have a truly federated model to host your APIs, where you have API teams in your organizations which are developing API, provide them with a through workspaces, provide them isolated areas where they can, publish their API, work or deploy their APIs and things like that. But it at the same time maintains centralized control on how the APIs are published because there's going to be one API developer portal. At the same time, you can apply policy to all the APIs that are in API management workspaces, which are like folders, give you the concept of that. With the GA, you have support for um, isolated hosts. Basically, it's a requirement. If you create a workspace, you have to create a gateway for that workspace. There, you cannot share gateway at this moment, okay? Which was the case in public preview, but not in GA. But at the same time, we looked at the enhancements, and shared gateway are on the roadmap. Okay, with a gateway, you can have different networking approach. You can have public, private, where inbound is public, call to the backend services is private, egress, and then private, where you call, access the API management workspace gateway through a private IP in a subnet, and the gateway itself calls the backend services through through the VNet as well. So all of these things that are available right now as a part of GA as we speak, and there are enhancements we already talked about. Some of those are faster provisioning time, as I said, the shared model for gateway and all that. So any question, and oh, of course, the big one is availability in more regions. There is no timeline for these, but as since they have announced it in the blog, I'm pretty sure just watch out for the Azure updates. Okay, any questions? We have 1 more minute, and here are the resources. So if there are no other questions, I will give everybody their 1 minute back and hope to see everyone next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Thank you very much.